Good afternoon and good morning for those of you in earlier time zones. Welcome to today's WAVE event, Moving Our Communities Forward. My name is Jessica Cohen and I served last year as the co-chair of Southwest WAVE's Community Committee. Across WAVE, we have our community pillar, and the mission of the community pillar is to promote volunteerism in the communities we serve, create economic inclusion, and shrink the digital divide. And at Verizon, as part of the State Government Affairs Group, we actually have a national community engagement effort led by an incredible team. And our first speaker, Lydia Pulley, our Senior Vice President of State Government and Regulatory Affairs, will be sharing all about the company's community engagement efforts, why we do this work, and why it's a critical part of the business. And then we're going to be hearing from an amazing panel of strong women who lead nonprofits that Verizon's supporting and partnering with across the country. So right now, to kick us off, I'm pleased to welcome Lydia Pulley to this event. Lydia's team, if you don't know, has enterprise-wide accountability for effective advocacy and defense of Verizon's positions on political and policy matters at all levels of state and local government across the country. The team also collaborates with all business units in the administration of the Verizon Foundations and the Verizon Corporate Social Responsibilities Philanthropic Program throughout the states. On the legal front, Lydia's team is responsible for representing all of Verizon's business units in regulatory matters nationwide and related court proceedings. So it's quite the docket that Lydia has on her team. Prior to her current position, Lydia held various positions within the federal state legal affairs group, representing Verizon in cases before state commissions and the FCC. And before joining Verizon, which I hear was a while ago, Lydia was in private practice in Washington with Wilmer Hale. She serves on a number of nonprofit boards and is not only a distinguished lawyer, but began her career as a planning engineer for C&P Telephone Company of Virginia. I love learning that, Lydia. So with that, I will turn it over to Lydia to tell us a little bit more about community engagement here at Verizon.
Oh, wow. Jessica, thank you so much. Thanks for that introduction, except maybe for that little bit about it's been a while. Yeah, it's been a hot minute here at Verizon. But anyway, thank you to WAVE for making this event possible. And thanks in advance to our awesome panel of women leaders. Really looking forward to our conversation in a few minutes. So anyway, a little bit about my group. As Jessica mentioned, I have an amazing team of professionals across the country, and we are responsible for relationships. And first we start with relationships at the state level. So for example, we lobby our state legislatures, again, across the country. We're responsible for relationships with governors and for state agencies as well. We also have relationships with all our cities across the country. So again, when it comes to dealing with city issues, with city councils, with mayors, city agencies, again, those are the relationships that we build so all these stakeholders can better understand Verizon and what Verizon brings to the table and the opportunities and the challenges. So anyway, on community, I also have a legal and a regulatory team of professionals, and they deal with various state and regulatory issues wherever they come up across the country. So I'm just a little bit proud of my team in case you can't hear it in my voice. So anyway, community engagement. A couple of years ago, maybe more than a couple, Craig Silliman came to me and said, okay, you guys do relationships state and local level. Let's talk about communities for a minute. What can we really do to form real meaningful relationships with our communities in cities, by the way, across the country? And the more we talked, he wasn't thinking about just a superficial relationships. He really wanted to build trust in communities, earn that goodwill. And I will have to say, when we first talked about it with Craig, I was just so excited. I also had no idea how challenging, but more importantly, how rewarding this would be. So anyway, we're Verizon, huge company. We do things at scale. We do big things. We run to crises. The question was how to bring this vision, this long-term vision of being a trusted partner in communities, how to bring that to life. And I quickly found out that to really go fast here, what we had to do was to slow down, because every city, every community is different. And the thing about community engagement is it really is about that local presence. So communities in New York, for example, New York City, they're different among themselves, much less different from LA, from Seattle, from Miami, Denver, Cleveland, New Orleans, and everywhere in between. So the fun of this is the scale, but it's also going super, super, super local and building those relationships. So from a strategic perspective, we really focus on building bottoms up relationships, really going deeply into communities. And what that means is it's locally driven. So for any particular city, for community, we try to really partner with local community leaders, local nonprofits, local religious leaders, media, etc., so that it's all very, very local. You'll hear that word local from me, throughout this presentation. It's all about the individual. And then it comes back to, again, building those relationships, but understanding each community. Because as we understand communities better, we can also understand the challenges that Verizon might face in communities and also understand better opportunities as well. So how do we do it? Nobody on my team will be surprised to hear me say it's all about the team. It's all about the team members. It's all about our individuals out in the communities who are the face of Verizon, but who also really understand, whose job is to understand the communities and to become a part of those communities and build that trust, build that goodwill. So first what we do, and again, this is across cities and communities across the country, we really try to learn everything we can about cities, but about what makes them tick. What are particular community challenges? What are particular community opportunities? Who are the leaders? How are these communities different? So we try, before we even go into a community, we try to find out everything we can about a community. And then, again, another word you hear me say a lot is we go in, and our job is not to talk, but it's to listen. And we're lucky enough to have dialogues with community leaders in different cities where, with help, we're able to find, sort of the key leaders in a community. And we ask for a couple of hours of their time, and we go in and we listen so we can learn as much as we can about a community. So again, it's all about forming those local relationships, the local alliances. But it's, while it's all about forming the local relationships externally, we actually partner very closely with groups internally as well. So with our CSR team, for example, as Verizon does its, philanthropy and its work, we're able to bring our expertise on communities and partner with our CSR team so that we can really make, meaningful, hyper-local, efforts on that level. So we get to be somewhat of the arms and legs in communities, which, again, has been tremendously helpful. We also partner with various parts of the business, whether it's network, consumer, business, because of our local knowledge, our hyper-local knowledge. We're able to, share our own knowledge with the company, so the company can identify not just opportunities, but really challenges. What are our blind spots in particular communities? What do we need to work on? How can we show up better? So we really get to partner internally as well. So you can probably tell that when I talk about community engagement and that it's all local, I don't necessarily like to talk about scale, but this is Verizon, so we talk about scale and scope. I mentioned it was across the country, but we're actually engaged, deeply engaged in over 100 cities in the country. We actually have over 1,200, stakeholders, relationships on this community level. That's what this team is able to do, is to go build those meaningful relationships. And we have all sorts of programs and ways of supporting our communities and interacting with them. So some of the things that we've learned, first again, centered on each individual community, but we've also found some of the most important things is to show up, to be responsive, to be creative, and to be really listening to the communities to see what we can do to help. Because at the end of the day, it's all about building trust. And I could go on and on and on about so many of the different things that we've done across the country. But one of my favorite stories actually goes back to March 2020. You guys might remember this little thing that happened in March 2020, shall we say. So as all of us were, shall we say, getting comfortable in our work from home chairs, where we still are, but in the very beginning, of course, we were all trying to figure out how to do our jobs, how to run to this crisis. Little did we know how long we'd be doing this, right? But and everyone so quickly bringing their creativity to the table, since our jobs were to be out in the communities. How do we do this? How do we do this digitally? How do we do this by video, et cetera, et cetera? What can we do to help our communities? What really struck me is what we learned early on. One of the most effective things we did in that week one was to just pick up the phone and call our partners, find out what's going on in the communities, make sure that our partners knew that we were there. So anyway, while I talk about each community being very different, you can imagine that we hear some of the same concerns across the country. Tremendous focus on digital equity, tremendous focus on education, workforce development, housing and gentrification. Again, it can look different in different communities, and it does. But here are some of the themes that we hear, as well as a lot of focus on entrepreneurship and small business. And one thing that helps us do is, as we figure out how to help a community with a given issue in one city, whatever programs that we put together there, we can also build upon elsewhere and tailor to other communities. So anyway, I can go on and on, but I really want to hear more about, more from our panelists here and the folks that are actually out there in the communities. Really looking forward to our conversation. And Jessica, I guess I turn it back over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Lydia, and thanks so much for the overview. I took a little scroll through our attendees, and I see a good amount of folks from our team, either SGA or public policy, but there are so many here that may not be familiar with the work that we're doing. So I really appreciate that, that overview. And I'm going to take a few minutes. I know, intros could get a little lengthy and onerous, but we have such an amazing panel that I just want to make sure that we share their qualifications, and also to share that they're from all across the country, which is really exciting too. And that, Lydia, to your point about Verizon being, pretty much everywhere. So our first panelist is Tanua Thrash-Intuck. She's the executive director of LISC LA. And Tanua's distinguished public service career spans more than 2 decades, leading racial equity initiatives and billion-dollar governmental programs with the goal of building better communities for those in greatest need. As executive director at LISC LA, she's responsible for forging resilient and inclusive communities of opportunity in the region. She led LISC LA's partnership with the City and County of Los Angeles for the LA COVID-19 Regional Recovery Fund, distributing more than $100 million in grants to micro enterprises, small businesses, and nonprofits. And I think everybody on the call from Verizon knows how important small business is. And so, Tanua, that really impressed me when I was taking a look through your biography. Prior to joining LISC, Tanua served as executive director of the West Angeles Community Development Corporation, where she led the growth of a $150 million real estate portfolio. I'm seeing a theme here in terms of millions and billions, Tanua. She serves as a board member or advisory board member to many entities in Southern California, and we are thrilled to have her with us. Next on our panel is Myra Pineda. She's having some technical difficulties, so we're sorting that out behind the scenes. Hopefully you'll see her shortly. But Myra is a local businesswoman and president and CEO of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of Louisiana, based in New Orleans, where over the years she's worked tirelessly to develop strong and long-lasting business relationships between Louisiana, the Hispanic community, and Latin America. She's the former Consul General of Honduras, which is amazing, and also the recipient of the Leadership Award by the New Orleans Hispanic Heritage Foundation. Myra is also a current and active board member in a number of organizations locally, but also the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. So we are so fortunate to have her with us. Our next panelist, coming from the Central Region in Detroit, Nicole Minier. Nicole is the Director of Development at Mercy Education Project, a Detroit nonprofit dedicated to empowering women and girls through education. After graduating with a degree in operatical vocal performance and communications from Oakland University, Nicole found her home in nonprofit development, has been serving the great cities of Chicago and Detroit since 2011 as a community servant and enthusiastic fundraiser. Nicole has contributed to organizations focused in arts and culture, youth homelessness, and cancer research. And in addition to providing a safe space for Detroit females to learn and find their path through education, Nicole serves on multiple boards within Detroit that are dedicated to the city's exciting renaissance. Well, Nicole, we did have a famous female conductor at a WAVE event last year, so we may be asking you back for a performance. We'll talk with the team here, but so excited to have you because of all that you do in the nonprofit space and the communal space in Detroit. And last but not least, my geographic partner in crime here, Elaine Sow. Elaine is the CEO at Asian Services in Action in Cleveland, Ohio. And in this role, she's responsible for leading the largest health and social service agency in the state of Ohio that is focused on addressing the needs of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, immigrants, and refugees. Asia's mission is to empower and advocate for AAPI so that they have access to equality, culturally and linguistically appropriate information, health, and social services. Elaine supervises a leadership team at Asia and has responsibility for ensuring the compliance of the requirements for Asia's International Community Health Center and federally qualified health center. And Elaine, I know it's been in Health and Human Services, you have barely had a chance to rest over the last almost 2 years. So we appreciate you taking the time to be with us. So without further ado, so a big welcome. We gave them a little heads up on what we're going to be chatting about, but I gave just a little bit about what your organizations do, or maybe they have an idea, but let's go around. And Tanua, we'll start with you. If you could tell us a little bit more about LISC, your partnership, LISC's partnership with Verizon, with I know a lot of our colleagues know about, but put some flavor on that for us, and especially what you're doing in LA at LISC.
Thanks so much, Jessica, Lydia, and to my fellow panelists. It's great to be on this call. Honestly, Verizon has been at the forefront of helping lead the national movement around the importance of investing in small businesses, and we're so happy that you chose LISC as the organization to help you do that. So let me tell some of your WAVE members a little bit about LISC so you have that background. Happy to talk about how you stepped in at a time when small businesses in our nation needed a direction most, and happy to share some of the outcomes here in the Los Angeles area. So when it comes to the Local Initiative Support Corporation, we are national in focus. While Lydia talked about and used the term local a few times, it certainly describes our organization because we have offices all across the country. I happen to oversee our LA office, but we've got more than, I think, 36 urban offices right now and are operating in 44 states with our rural footprint. So we're in a lot of places, and a lot of that work is done at the local level to make sure that we're responding to what's needed in those specific geographies across the country. A huge part of what we see as needed is access to capital, access to know-how, and the ability to create the kind of capacity that will ensure that other organizations in the community are able to carry out the community's vision. So as a national community development financial institution, we bring capital to communities every day, mostly in the form of loans, sometimes in the form of recoverable grants, and more recently, as you heard, we've been quite prolific in providing just straight up, regular old grants to not only nonprofits, but to small businesses as well. We also do a lot of capacity building. LISC can't do this work alone. In order for a local community to thrive, it's really important that that local community have a series of organizations, including like the ones who are on this panel today and my colleagues, who are able to support the efforts and what the desires of that community. And a lot of time what we provide there is both training as well as other grant dollars to help those organizations grow and thrive. So that's a bit of the work that we do at LISC across the country in both urban and rural communities. When it comes to the work that Verizon has done in partnership with LISC, as was noted, something happened. A major public health and economic shift happened in March of 2020. At that moment, so many of us were, scrambling, trying to determine how do we make sure that we keep everyone safe, that we keep folks healthy, but yet be able to move along financially. And Verizon was one of the first corporations to stand up and say, I think at the time initially it might have been 5 million, then it was 7 million. I think we got up to 10 million in a very short period of time. And Verizon understood the importance of investing in those small businesses. By partnering with LISC, Verizon was able to get on the ground quickly with that L, that local, making sure that community organizations who were diverse, who were in communities that often didn't get access to capital and other support were invested in first. And we did just that with those resources. We held national calls for small businesses to tell us their story, to connect with us, to be able to get access to these resources. Very proud of what we were able to do. And so while we were able to do that nationally, that also meant that a number of local cities and jurisdictions, as you heard here in the city of LA and the county of LA, called upon LISC to help them deploy additional resources. We credit that to the infrastructure and the leadership that Verizon put forth very early on in the process, showing the country and showing other corporations what it means to support our small businesses in community at a time when they needed it most. And so we've been able to use those platforms to really help bring additional and targeted resources to small, diverse, and otherwise disadvantaged businesses here in LA. And then finally, I'll just touch on the work that we're doing regarding the digital recovery toolkit that you have. It's great to be able to provide dollars, grants that don't have to be paid back. But a part of what I talked about that we do is capacity building. We want to make sure that these small businesses have what they need to continue on to find new markets, to get themselves ready if there is another, change in terms of public health or economic crisis. We want them to be resilient. And we're so proud to partner with Verizon in making sure that small businesses get access to this fantastic content library that you have created. It's got some of the most engaging videos. The people look fantastic. The content's a lot of fun. And we in Los Angeles alone have registered nearly 1,000 businesses in our market so that they can access these resources on their own time. Because of your support, we were also able to encourage a number of them to take at least 2 of those classes. And by taking 2 of those classes, they were eligible for another $1,000 grant from us through our partnership. So I'll stop there, but we hope Verizon doesn't stop there and continues to help us bring the resources, both financial as well as know-how, to small businesses so we can continue to make strong, healthy businesses and community. Thanks.
Nua, that's amazing. I will tell you that we had at least, well, in the first round, we had 2 grantees here in Cleveland, a barbershop in the African American community and an Asian restaurant in our Asia town. And I spoke with them personally, as I know many of my colleagues on the community engagement team did with their LISC grantees. And it just made a tremendous, tremendous difference. And now, of course, we're sharing all about Verizon Small Business Digital Ready with our local small businesses. And that's getting great reception as you're seeing in LA. Nicole, we'll move east to Detroit. Nicole, why don't you share a little bit about your organization and the partnership with Verizon?
Sure. Thanks again for having me. We're very excited for this opportunity. So Mercy Education Project, or more known as MEP, we are located in the southwest region of Detroit, where we serve a very, very, very diverse student body, and it's a female-centric learning facility. We have women and girls. Our women's program is adult-based sex education, GED prep, And English now, thanks to Verizon, actually English as a second language, we've been able to expand. We primarily serve Arabic women, Hispanic and Latina, and then African American. And then our girls program is grades K through 12. And that's all really just after school tutoring with math and language arts. We go into the Detroit public schools and find girls who maybe need a little additional confidence in their studies, or their teachers or guidance counselors has identified them as falling behind. So we bring them on in and we let them know that they can do it. And we provide one-to-one tutoring that is more intimate and really hone in on what the student needs rather than in the classroom where we have to do more of a group study. We also have a college and career readiness program for girls that are all first-generation students, college students, and we get them fully funded through FAFSA and scholarships and accepted into college. Last year, we had 7 girls, and among those 7 girls, 35, they were accepted to 35 colleges. They're all in college now as freshmen and fully funded, so we're just very proud of them. Really, at the time we had our partnership with Verizon, we were given a grant that was really supposed to help us move the needle with digital literacy. A lot of our students, primarily our women's program, which is where we focus a lot of our Verizon efforts, English is not their native language. So we really wanted to go in and just see what they needed first as people who don't speak English as a native language, and see what we can do to get them ready for the GED to move on forward. So really, we received funding right before shelter in place. So it was a very interesting time, but we're so grateful that Verizon was able to be really our boots on the ground. So with that, it started off as online classes and having Verizon volunteers come in and teach these classes. But then when everything shut down here in Detroit and it became a hotspot, Verizon was there really the whole way through, and with the funding, we were able to pivot to 100% online learning. We're now an official online school through the state of Michigan. So really, it's been wonderful because now we have a lending library. We lend out computers and Verizon hotspots for people who don't have resources. We've also been able to update our entire computer lab as well as expand it, thanks to Verizon. So now all the women who are on our wait list, we're able to test them and do their state mandated assessment tests to either place them in our ESL courses, our adult-based education, or right to GED prep. Also, it's just been really wonderful that during shelter in place, our college and career readiness students, they won a contest through Ford Motor Company. And it was really, how do you bring mobility to a city that doesn't have mass transit? And for many people, cars are just not affordable. So they created this thing called a mobility hub, which was actually a public physical space for the community located in one of the city's major parks. And it had access to micromobility, the bus, and all that stuff. But thanks to Verizon, everybody who visited that hub and within 300 feet of it was able to have free Wi-Fi. So not only did they get to help our students make their vision a reality, they were able to serve an entire neighborhood in Detroit. So that was just truly amazing to see the whole way through. So honestly, thanks Verizon, our pivot to online learning would not have been possible, and we're just so grateful for it.
That's I knew a little bit about this before our panel, but hearing it kind of in full, Nicole, it's really unbelievable. And just, we've all seen in our local communities this bridging for digital inclusion, especially for students, K through 12, college students, et cetera. So really, really inspiring what you guys have been able to do with our partnership in Detroit. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll head a little bit more east, not far, a couple hours down 90. Elaine, do you want to talk about Asia and our partnership here in Cleveland, Ohio?
Yes, thank you. This is really a privilege to be able to share what we've been doing with the support of Verizon. And I want to thank both you, Jessica, as well as Lydia, the entire Verizon team, as well as my distinguished panelists alongside here on this journey. So the pandemic for the Asian community has been, a very challenging and also learning experience. So as many of you have probably heard, there was this kind of dual pandemic for the Asian community where we experienced an uptick in anti-Asian hostilities, sometimes violence, and that impacted not only individual community members, but also local businesses. I want to applaud the CEO of Verizon, Hans Vestberg, for doing something that not many leaders take the time to give a very public statement um, against the kind of hostilities that the Asian community experienced. So I do want to applaud him for coming out very publicly about the hostilities against Asians that just simply have no place in this world. And I just want to thank him, to the extent that he's listening. Thank you so much. And then also to explore how we have been using the support from Verizon to address the community's healing. So for 7 months, for the past 7 months, Asian Services in Action has been hosting healing circles over Zoom because we could not gather, I guess, as safely as we might want to in person. We would have loved to have had some intimate group sharing, but Zoom was the closest thing that we could during this time. And during this time, we held monthly virtual meetings with community members so that they could share their challenges throughout the pandemic as well as support one another. Because even though some of the incidents that have happened across the country might not have happened in Cleveland, Ohio, although there have been incidents in Cleveland, Ohio, we have all experienced as a community kind of secondary and or vicarious trauma through the process. And our behavioral health team has engaged with the community in a way and in language so that we can all support one another during these difficult and challenging times. So thank you, Verizon, for helping us host these monthly events so that the community can begin to heal. Along the lines of, our community and civic engagement department has also really taken on a number of these challenges. Additionally, during the pandemic, there's been the regular need to support the community throughout the pandemic. As an organization that supports the newly arrived community, this newly arrived community is typically having a language access barrier to all sorts of services. And so our bilingual team has been on the ground providing all sorts of resources in language, both written and spoken, so that community members have access to all of the COVID resources that are available. Through our federally qualified health center, we have been vaccinating community members hundreds per week throughout 2021 and continuing through 2022. So these community members, some of them might not otherwise have had access to testing or vaccination had our outreach team members not helped them to get appointments and schedule through in-language services. And then last but not least, some of the support from Verizon has made it possible for us to support micro enterprise during the difficult pandemic period. One other piece that I saw on one of Verizon's channels was how how the community has been specifically impacted by low patronage at Asian-owned businesses, and this is evident in the local Cleveland market as well. Local Asian-owned businesses saw a steep decline in patronage throughout the pandemic, and so through the support from Verizon, we were able to support some of the small businesses through helping them apply for Payroll Protection Act loans, as well as emergency, economic disasters as bilingual team members were able to facilitate that process through the support of Verizon. So thank you so much to Verizon. We are ecstatic to continue this partnership moving forward, and the community thanks you.
Thanks so much, Elaine. And I think what's interesting internally at Verizon is that we see a lot of announcements about funding on Up to Speed. And in this particular case, back last spring, 2021, our CEO Hans announced a $10 million commitment to the AAPI community, and our gift to Asia is part of that $10 million commitment. So this is part of what we wanted to highlight for all of you that are joining us for this call, is to actually hear some of the stories of how what you might hear on Up to Speed is this very, very large national commitment is really affecting lives locally on the ground. So Elaine, thanks so much for sharing that. We're going to move to New Orleans now. We have Myra Pineda with us. We're having some technical difficulties with the video, but Myra, if you want to go off mute, we'd love to have you share more about the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and our partnership with Verizon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
I'm very sorry not to be able to be on camera, but my face is really not that important when I'm in such great company. And thank you very much for the invitation. I apologize again. On behalf of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of Louisiana, it's been a pleasure working with Verizon over the past couple years, and especially through this unprecedented pandemic. Really, we would not have been able to continue many of our programming with the community if we had not received the funding and the support that we have. One of our main pillars and areas that we work in is building that capacity, the technical assistance, bridging the technology gap, and helping small businesses and individuals access, better opportunities. So we know it's been very difficult with the pandemic, but we saw how, the disparity in the impact to the Hispanic community was really highlighted and magnified through the pandemic in areas like technology and computer literacy. Our programming continued thanks to Verizon's support, and we have been, we graduated last year over 100 in the 8-month cohorts that we were able to impart. Some of them virtually, most of them virtually, but then we returned to in-person, and now we're currently doing in-person again. Hopefully Omicron won't make us have to change that, but we're moving forward with that. And then the technical assistance that we were able to provide through the past, 2 years was also possible in large part thanks to Verizon's generosity. And just identifying how important it was to help these small businesses through this very critical time. One of my colleagues just mentioned the language barriers. That was one thing that was preventing small business owners to access capital, to access the grants that were being offered. And we at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce made sure that we were helping people by filling their applications and helping them with the questions and the doubts that they had. There is so many other layers of barriers that impact the Hispanic community other than language. It was the documentation and the immigration status, the political environment that we were living throughout this time. We also managed to help and advocate for the census that was being done throughout this time. So there were so many things happening at the same time that I'm very proud to say the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce took on a very important leadership role in this area of more than just a Chamber of Commerce, and really accepted, the responsibility to advocate and to educate the community. In the COVID space, we have been, at the forefront, advocating with local authorities, helping them with outreach efforts, in vaccination and also just educational opportunities, panels, and just social media and getting the information out in the language, and also helping the leaders understand what the specific needs of the Hispanic community were. So, but going back to digital literacy, we all saw that big gap right there. And that's where we're focusing on very, very carefully right now with both individuals and businesses so that we can help build a strong, skilled workforce and also help businesses scale. And if they ever have to face, something like we just did, that they're prepared and ready to move forward with the correct technical knowledge that they need for their businesses and software knowledge. So we're once again very proud of our partnership with Verizon. Have participated in similar programming throughout the past 2 years and will continue to do so. We have a wonderful relationship with our local team and regional team, and I thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And we have to continue finding ways to work together and to make the best of those excellent resources that you're putting out, like the Digital Ready program that we can share, because we know we've learned one thing, and that is that we're never going to go back to just in-person events and workshops and seminars. We can make these resources available through so many other ways, and then make sure that more people take advantage of them. We throughout the past 2 years have also received grant funding that has helped small business owners, in small quantities, but every little bit counts if it means keeping the lights on. And that's what we've seen, that we've been able to share and to help businesses stay open. And that's been, a tremendous help in the community. And just in general, like I said, making sure that everyone understands the needs of the Hispanic community, because they are very specific, and we are very happy to be here to do that.
That's great. Thank you so much. And I think we're definitely hearing a theme, right, around communities, local communities, and how important small business is, not just to the economy, but the actual people, right? The people that own those small businesses and are trying to survive, as well as the families, and Nicole, I think about what you shared, the families that are just trying to get through this pandemic and keep their kids educated and in school. Well, I'm going to ask a question. Maybe time is running low, but we're going to see if we can get through one or two questions. But this is my invitation to everyone on the call. If you have questions that you'd like someone or all of the panel to answer, please put it in the Q&A section. We'll be checking that. And while you do that, I'll kick us off with our next round by asking, so, we at Verizon, we have 4 key stakeholders, and we hear about this a lot. We have customers, employees, shareholders, and society, and in no particular order, by the way. So our question to Verizon, we'd love to hear from the 4 of you. What does it mean for your organization in the nonprofit space, and frankly, the people you serve, to know that a corporation like Verizon, we're big, we're very, very big. What does it mean to you guys that that Verizon as a corporation places such a high value on community engagement, and is so committed to advancing the success of programs like yours all across the country? And Nicole, we'll start in the middle of the country. Nicole, why don't you take it first?
Sure, no problem. So a little bit about MEP as well. As we're a smaller nonprofit. We're actually celebrating 30 years this year. So just having you guys as a companion is really about, sustainability for us. Like I said, we were able to quickly pivot with all of the resources we were able to provide access to for our students. And also that brand co-branding really helped quite a bit as well with just our size. But really for our students, more importantly, it means reliability. They know that the technology lending library is provided by Verizon. They know the new computers that they use are provided by Verizon. And the access to Wi-Fi itself is also provided by Verizon. So for them, they don't have to stress about, being able to log on, to have access to technology so that they can, worry about other things during a mass pandemic. But one of my favorite stories that really hit home came from one of our Middle Eastern students. She is doing online learning, and she uses one of our laptops from the Lundin Library. And for the first time ever, she was able to go to a virtual parent-teacher conference. She learned, how to use a computer, how to log on, how to do Zoom, and then also through our ESL studies. This was the first time that she's ever been able to fully understand what her student's teacher was telling her about her child. And she was able to fully be there as a parent and help with homework because she's going through her GED studies. And after she had the most successful conversation with her child's teacher, she called our program director and just told them, thank you for this. I wouldn't have been able to be a better parent if I didn't know how to use the computer and if I wasn't in your program. And she was just so overcome with gratitude. And I think that really, really paints a picture of what, something that as simple as we see as a laptop, how just having access to that through a trusted company can really move the needle in a huge way in someone's life.
Okay, Nicole, so I'm a mom. I'm totally emotional now. I'm just going to ask Elaine to pick it up from there while I recover, because that's incredibly touching.
That's an extremely hard act to follow, Nicole, but I'll do my best. So, I mean, it really, like I said earlier, it's rare. It's rare that a corporation will make the investment in the community that Verizon has. What it says about a corporation like Verizon is that it truly is invested in the community and is truly invested in the success of the community. And the belief that when the community thrives, then we all do better. And so it is really meaningful that Verizon has invested in the community here in Northeast Ohio, Cleveland, and beyond, to really embrace the community at a time when we have felt invisible. And when Verizon took this major step of committing to invest in the community, it made the Asian American Pacific Islander community feel seen. So this was extremely important to the community, and we're extremely grateful for the investment.
Okay, well, Elaine, I think you met Nicole where she was, so thank you for sharing that. Myra, what about down in New Orleans?
Well, yes, Nicole and Elaine have definitely shared my feelings, but I'd like to take it one step further, and that is that Verizon has placed, such trust in the Hispanic community. In my case, normally we see corporations with the mainstream chambers, at higher levels and all of that, and that's wonderful. But many forget that as a small, very focused chamber of commerce in the Hispanic community, we need that same kind of support, and that's what we received. So that trust and that gives us the credibility we need before many others, because Verizon believed in us and the work that we're doing at a very grassroots level. And that's so critical. I'll share a story, and that's through the pandemic, we created this partnership with the Jefferson school system, and it was to help parents and with the digital literacy capacity, because they couldn't help their children with the homework. So the program that we implemented has now become a staple for the local Jefferson Parish school system, and is being duplicated in other school systems throughout the state, because the need is there. Louisiana boasts one of the 7 fastest growing Hispanic communities in the United States. So there growing fast, the community's growing fast, but the infrastructure is not there to serve that community. So we're helping in that way. And that's what I mentioned, that we're a very non-traditional chamber in that way. But we're very happy to be able to help.
That's great. Thank you so much. And it's again just the span, the range of stories that you all are sharing. It's just so impressive. Tanua, what your thoughts?
Yeah, so when I think about our work pre-pandemic, a huge part of what we've been doing is investing in main streets that often sometimes, compete and say, hey, we're small businesses. Do corporations care about us? Do they care about community? And honestly, when Verizon stepped up and was one of the first who said Main Street matters, we need to invest in these diverse owned businesses, these businesses in communities that need them to be there. We saw that as a great way to extend our work. And I think it really continues on with your, digital ready program, because so many of these businesses hadn't gone digital before. And so with this platform, it's showing that there is a need to and a willingness on behalf of a major corporation like Verizon to make that investment and to tailor it in such a way to help these small businesses be as successful as they can possibly be.
Thanks so much, Tanua. And for all of you on the call that may not be as familiar with Verizon Small Business Digital Ready as the community engagement team or other parts of the business, we're going to drop that link in the event chat so you can check it out as well. And if there's contact information through the website there too. We are rapidly running out of time. In fact, we've basically run out of time. So quick, before I want to ask Lydia for her impressions, but before we do that, I just want to give a very big thank you to my colleagues, because this panel did not come together through osmosis. I want to thank Randall Hernandez, Bree Ellison, and Tandra LeMay, who are community engagement managers in LA and then Detroit and New Orleans, respectively, for their help in bringing this panel together. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And Lydia, could you have imagined this a few years ago, talking to Craig about what this could be? Share your thoughts.
Wow. Yeah. How do I wrap up those conversations? Just tremendous. And yes, to your point, Jessica, wow, if I could have imagined this a couple of years ago. But I guess I would say a couple of things. One is what really struck me, listening to you guys, is just the creativity that you bring to the table. Tanya, I think you said it first, it's not just about grants, it's, all these other programs. How do you harness the resources? One of the resources, by the way, is creativity, to serve communities and to serve individuals and communities. And each one of you had a different story in terms of how do you actually meet people where they are. And I guess to that point too, you have enabled Verizon to really reach communities, not from afar, but because of our partnerships with you, you've helped us be able to touch communities. And I guess really what I would say is you guys were so gracious in your thanks to Verizon. But let me turn it back on you, which is thank you. Again, not just thank you for what you do for communities, what you do for individuals and communities, but thank you for helping us, reach individuals in there. So really appreciate what you do. Obviously, my team already knows how much I appreciate them. They hear that all the time. But thank you, Jessica. Thank you for pulling this together through osmosis or otherwise, and I was really honored to be a part of it.
Thanks so much, Lydia. Quick, we have a few minutes. Our ladies on the panel, any suggestions for us, thoughts you have, parting thoughts for us, 30 seconds to a minute. Tanua, why don't you kick us off?
Oh, keep doing this. I just said at the top of my conversation. We know you kicked it off and you were leading the way. We hope you continue to lead and making sure that communities have what they need in these very uncertain times.
That's great. Myra. You take it.
Absolutely. We want to meet more of the leadership team, maybe do something in the local area in my case, but definitely keep working with us and finding ways of helping the community access the opportunities and really raise the barriers and the disparities that exist and that have been magnified through the pandemic. So let's leave all of that behind and move forward, building a stronger community, a more equitable community.
That's great. Nicole?
Yeah, just a second, everyone else on this panel, just thank you for doing this and keep it going. Definitely love the fact that you guys roll up your sleeves and you're the boots on the ground. I love that I can contact Bree, my representative, with really just anything and say, hey, what do you think? And she'll say, let me run it up and see what's going on. So I just really appreciate that you guys are willing to just be in it with us as a teammate rather than a major corporation giving us, the top down rules and guidelines. So yeah, just keep the dialogue going. It's always helpful. And, every nonprofit, we just want to be heard so that we can serve.
That's great. Elaine?
All hard acts to follow, but I'll bring it home. I hope, by saying that this has been a really wonderful partnership with Verizon. I hope that it continues. I also hope that that Verizon will be there in times of celebration as well as in times of need, and that we can all, post pandemic have a celebration and a coming together for all the impact that we have achieved together.
Absolutely. And Elaine, since you're just 20 minutes down the road for me, I will be there. So excited for that. So before we close, just a quick plug for WAVE. If you're interested in getting involved with our ERG, you can just type in ERGs in the VZ web, find WAVE, and we have a new regional structure. So there are even more ways to get involved. And if this work spoke to you, if you are interested in the community pillar, please get involved there. If not, there are other opportunities to get involved. And I just wanted to give my huge thank you to our panelists, to Lydia for your time, which I know is precious. So thank you so much for sharing with all of us. And thank you to everyone who's joined us. We had a great time sharing our community engagement efforts with you. And we look forward to more events with WAVE in the future. Thanks so much, everyone.